I'm in my mid-30s and to me this felt like watching Gen Z on TikTok in a haunted castle in space. Sorry. Hello and welcome back to Chess's Book Nook. I really hope you're doing well today. I read 16 books this month, which seems like a lot, but I think it's probably because I've read a few less books in April, and then some of the ones that started in April ended up finishing this month, so yeah, it's ended up being a pretty good reading month for me this month. It's been a real mixed bag this month. I have some 5-star reads. It's given me a new favourite author, and I have just binged on a couple of the same authors this month. I also unfortunately have a few 1 and 2 star books, including one that did really disappoint me because I was expecting it to be so good and it just wasn't, and there's also one that I didn't like, which I feel is going to upset some people because I know it's such a cult favourite, but it wasn't for me. But yeah, let's get into it. Genre wise, I read 3 literary fiction, 3 contemporary romance, 3 fantasy, 2 classic, 2 Regency romance, 2 speculative fiction and 1 sci-fi. So a super quick note on how I rate. To get 5 stars for me, it has to absolutely blow me away. It becomes a new favourite and it has to give me that kind of 5-star feeling. So 4 stars is still, I loved it, I really recommend reading it. 3 stars, I still liked it. 2 stars, it's okay. And to get 1 star, it has to be bad, in my opinion. This wrap-up will be spoiler free, but if you want a more in-depth review of any of these, please do let me know. I have already filmed an in-depth review of one of them, which will be coming out soon. Okay, so we started off really strong in the month because the first book I read was Emily Henry's A Great Big Beautiful Life, and I absolutely love this. I read it on Kindle, but I've loved it so much that I got a physical copy because I know that I'm going to read it again and I want it on my shelves. I devoured this book in a day, and I'm so glad that I gave it a chance because before this I'd only read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and it's a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I thought it was just okay. I didn't dislike it, but I thought it was fine. I just didn't really relate to the main character. She was all about big cities. I can't relate any less than that. It also kept going on about Pelotons. It almost felt like it was sponsored by Pelotons. It just wasn't for me. And I'd seen a lot of good things about Emily Henry, so when this came out, it sounded just more up my alley, and it absolutely was. Plot-wise, we follow Alice, who is a journalist competing with another journalist called Hayden, to be able to write the biography of a legendary celebrity called Margaret. I fell in love with Alice as a main character. I found her so relatable and I loved the love story. I really enjoyed the way that the story had kind of a story within a story, so I didn't get bored because we were kind of going between the different parts of it. I also just loved the kind of small town vibes. The storyline and the way that they were speaking to this celebrity, it did give me big Evelyn Hugo vibes, and I was worried that it was going to be kind of an inferior version of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo because I love that book. It's one of my favourites. But this is actually very different. Aside from that premise being kind of the same, it has a very different feel to it. There's also some really beautiful, really moving writing in this, and at the end I sobbed. like I didn't just tear up, I literally bawled, okay? This book made me cry so hard at the end, but like happy tears. So yeah, I loved it. This was 5 stars for me. Then it made me go on a little bit of an Emily Henry reading binge. So the next book we have to talk about, I didn't read the physical copy, I read on Kindle, and it was Emily Henry's Funny Story. So the premise of Funny Story is that our 2 main characters end up living together after their partners leave them for each other. I hope I've said that right. So there is some kind of fake dating in this, and you can imagine what happens, right? Like it's not surprising, but it is very well done. I really enjoyed the chemistry between Miles and Daphne, the main characters in Funny Story. I thought they were great together, and Daphne was the most relatable to me of the Emily Henry main characters I've read so far. I just related to her so strongly, and you know what, we even dressed kind of the same. They were describing her as this librarian look with this these like buttoned up shirts and well, I don't know, I felt kind of seen. I will say that the banter isn't as good as it is in Great Big Beautiful Life, in my opinion. And for it being called Funny Story, I didn't find there were that many funny moments. There are some, but I didn't love it as much, but I did really enjoy it. I would say Miles he's a really sweet love interest, but he did kind of annoy me a bit because he's like this. He kind of reminded me of a boyfriend I had at 17 who was like a stoner with a filthy bedroom. It's that Miles is 38, so you kind of like, come on Miles, get it together. But at the same time, I am half joking because I did really like him as a character, and so overall I rated it 4 stars. The next one I read was another Emily Henry. I decided to read Happy Place next. And unfortunately, this one ended my Emily Henry binge. If you like this book, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your terrible taste. No, obviously I'm joking. I am I'm really happy if you liked it, but this book was not for me at all. It has a pretty fun premise. Our 2 main characters are basically in forced proximity to each other. They go on holiday with a group of friends, and because they don't want to ruin the holiday, even though they've actually broken up, they decide to pretend that they're still together. So there's that kind of, yeah, there's fake dating, forced proximity tropes going on. But the biggest trope that there is miscommunication. And I can't stand the miscommunication trope. It just drives me up the wall, especially when the characters are a little bit older and they're acting so young and so immature, and I didn't buy it, and there's no way I believed that these people had been together for 8 years prior to this. I didn't believe they'd been together for 8 weeks prior to this because they could not speak to each other. And I didn't buy the friendships. These people were supposed to be best friends. They go to this place, it's their happy place. I didn't buy it. I'm sorry to say, I just didn't care if Harriet and Wynne were together at the end or not. It just didn't mean anything to me. I thought, I don't care if they're together, I don't care what happens. I know some people absolutely love it, but yeah, I guess this one just wasn't for me. And it does seem like with Emily Henry books, people have they're all over the place with their ratings. Some people have given 5 stars to Happy Place and 1 star to Funny Story, and yeah, it seems there's no common consensus from what I can tell. And yeah, for me, I did dislike this one. It committed the cardinal sin of making me feel bored while I was reading it. So yeah, unfortunately, I did give it a 1.5. But I do plan on reading more Emily Henry books. Please let me know which one you think I should read next. If you have a favourite, then do let me know in the comments. Next, I read The Witchwood Not by Olivia Atwater. I read it on Kindle, so again, I don't have a physical copy. I love Olivia Atwater. The first book I read of her was Half a Soul, and I loved it. And then I read 10,000 Stitches, and I loved that even more. So yeah, I was so excited to read this one, and I did really enjoy it. Plot-wise, we follow Winifred Hall. She is hired as a governess at this manor house, and it's set in the Victorian period, and it's got this very creepy, eerie vibe, and it goes into some darker themes, like darker than I've seen Olivia Atwater do in her other books. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I did like the creepiness and the vibes. I didn't think the love story element was as strong in it, but I did like the characters, and I did enjoy it overall. I do definitely want to read the next one in the series when it comes out, so overall I was torn between giving this a 3.75 to 4 stars, so it's around that. Next, I read Vera, or The Nihilists by Oscar Wilde, and again I read this on Kindle. Oscar Wilde is one of my favourite authors. I absolutely love most of his work that I've read. This one is a tragedy set in 19th century Russia, and we follow our protagonist Vera as she joins the Nihilist movement in order to try and take down the Tsarist regime. She's been chosen by the Russian revolutionaries to assassinate the Tsar, but there is some complications, and she really has to decide whether she's going to be loyal to the Nihilists or whether she's going to be loyal to someone who she loves. It's actually based on a real story about a woman of the same name, Vera, who was a Marxist writer and a revolutionary. I really wanted to love this because, like I say, I do absolutely love Oscar Wilde. But unfortunately this was not my favourite of his works. It just didn't hold up to his others, so I thought it was okay. I kind of liked it. It just didn't have that Wilde trademark wit that I've grown so used to from reading his work, and the writing didn't seem as beautiful as his other writing. So yeah, unfortunately this was 3, maybe 2.75 stars from me, which definitely is the lowest I've ever ranked something by Wilde. Next up I read Klara in the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, and the plot of this is we follow Klara, who is an AF, which is an artificial friend, and the AFs are there to keep teenagers company and stop them from being lonely, basically. And Klara is in the shop, she's with some other AFs and she's waiting to be chosen by a teenager, and we see everything from her perspective, and she has a very naive perspective, and this book really looks at what it means to be human. I'm always drawn to books that linger with you after you finish them, that stay in your mind, that make you think, they're thought-provoking, and this is definitely thought-provoking. It's funny because it didn't give me like an emotional gut punch at the end. There was no kind of catharsis, there was no real release like that. But the more I sit with it, the more I appreciate it for its subtlety. There is this quiet melancholy, and it just really makes you think after you've read it. So I absolutely loved this, and once again it set me on a little bit of a binge reading the author's work, because this is the first book by him that I'd read. So I am giving this, and it's either a 4.75 or a 5. Like I said, I'm such a harsh rater, like I loved this. We should say 5, shouldn't we, really? The next book I read was another Ishiguro, and it is Never Let Me Go, which is one of his most famous works and has been on my TBR for years now, frankly. This one again had the same restraint in the writing, the same subtlety, and I could really see from this that that's clearly something that the author just excels in. I mean, this is his writing is masterful. Plot-wise, we are following children at an English boarding school. It's a very elite boarding school, but there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and we can see that things just aren't as they seem. And I can't really say much more than this without spoiling it, and I do not want to do that. I will say that again, there are themes of what it means to be human, and it is an emotional book. But once again, it did deny me that kind of that gut punch, you know. It just didn't give me that release. It's so like quietly sad and quietly haunting and disturbing, but it's like there's this subtle horror to it, and I did see people, I looked this up afterwards, and there were people saying like, oh, this made me cry, and it didn't do that for me, but it did leave me thinking about it for a long time after I read it. You know, I almost had this feeling of unease after reading this, and almost like a cognitive dissonance, and I felt kind of detached from the characters, but then I feel like that was probably intentional, because the characters speak with detachment, and again I can't tell you why, but this is definitely worth a read, and I give this 4.5 stars. I didn't love it quite as much as Klara in the Sun. I will just add that one of the reasons this unsettled me is it reminds me of how much people are willing to look away, and the horrors that people are willing to accept as long as they can turn a blind eye to them. It shows how dehumanisation doesn't require malice or cruelty, it just requires apathy. So continuing on my binge of Ishiguro, I then read The Remains of the Day, and once again, beautiful writing in that same restrained tone. And in this we're following a butler called Stevens. We never learn his first name, he's always just known to us as Stevens, and he's from a time that doesn't really exist anymore. He's a butler at this old manor house, and he's a very prestigious butler. And Stevens values his duty above all else, and it really examines what's meaningful, what makes life meaningful, what we put above other things. Stevens talks constantly about dignity, and he doesn't allow himself to feel the emotions, and his not feeling of them, like, we can see that he has them, but it makes him unreliable as a narrator, which is another thing that Ishiguro does a lot. There are loads of his books with unreliable narrators. But he's not unreliable because he's not telling us the truth. It's more so that he won't allow himself to be seen. And there's just this quiet melancholy with it. It's not, and again, it didn't give me a gut punch, but nearly on the last few pages, it did make me emotional. I will say this isn't plot heavy at all. I would say there's much stronger of a plot in Never Let Me Go and Klara and the Sun. This isn't plot heavy. It's more like a character-driven study, and we're getting to know Stevens. You do want to keep reading because you want to find out more about him. He's such a fascinating character, and his restraint is so fascinating. And it's really all about regret, but he won't really admit to himself that he does regret his choices, but we can see that he does, and it's very beautiful. Again, because I didn't get that, because I didn't get like the same release again, I found it didn't feel quite like 5 stars to me, but it did feel like a very solid 4 to up to 4.5. I'm so bad at actually pinning down a rating. Okay, and then the final one I read on my Ishiguro binge was A Pale View of Hills, Ishiguro, and this one was absolutely stunning. It was my favourite so far of his, which I believe is quite an unpopular opinion, because I think the other two that I just talked about are his best known works. But I absolutely love this one. It's a pretty short read. This is 183 pages, and I read this in one sitting. Like, I just absolutely through it. It was, I wanted to know what happened, because there's a sense of mystery to it. This is such a haunting book. I mean, genre-wise, it's literary fiction, but it has elements of like psychological elements, and it has some mystery in it, and I really wanted to know what happened. Plot-wise, we are following our unreliable narrator Atsuko. She's reliving her memories of post-war Japan and her friendship there with a woman named Sashiko, and Sashiko has a daughter named Mariko, and we're looking at what happened back when she was still living in Japan, because she lives here in the UK now when we're hearing about this. And again, we can really tell everything's not quite as it seems. There's something very, very eerie to it. At first I even wondered if this was going to have ghosts in it, honestly, which it doesn't. It's not a supernatural book, but it's just haunting. The twist in this, obviously, not going to say too much about it at all, but it's extremely well done, and it is so subtle, and I've never seen anyone do a subtle twist before. I mean, normally you read, like, for example, a thriller, and the twist is there, and it's a big impact twist. Yeah, this is a really subtly done twist, and I don't even know how you do it. I mean, the man's a genius, clearly. This is just brilliant. I love this, and there will be an in-depth review coming on my channel soon. I've actually already recorded it, but I think it'll be going up after this one. So yes, clearly this was 5 stars. Okay, the next one I read was a sci-fi book, and it was Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. I really hope I've said that name right. I'm sorry if I haven't. I feel like people are going to be mad at me for this, because I just didn't like this book. I thought it was really well written. I could tell that the author is clearly a very good writer, but I guess it's one of those where it just wasn't for me. Unfortunately, I didn't connect to it. I didn't enjoy it at all, really. I mean, plot-wise, it was described as lesbian necromancers in space, and I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. But honestly, I found the fact that they were lesbians, I mean, to be fair, it's not explicitly told that they are in the book, but there's no sapphic romance in it, and even the necromancy doesn't really come into it that much, to be honest. The main character, Gideon, she was not my cup of tea. She came off as very angsty to me. She came off as like much younger. And at the beginning there was, before we'd really gotten into it, I think there were like 3 references to her magazines. And you're like, oh, I mean, yeah, who didn't have queer magazines in the room as a teenager? Come on, let's move on. The plot for the first 100 pages, I had no idea what was going on, frankly. No idea. I don't like books that spoon feed things to me, but I do need to know why things are happening and the broader context, and I just didn't get that, and that made it really hard to care about the characters. It made it hard for me to care about Gideon and Harrow. There's a murder mystery element into it, but it takes, I don't know, a couple of 100 pages to get there, and by the time we got there, I just didn't really care. I didn't know if I was supposed to care who was being bumped off. I didn't really like the tone. I felt like it was a mix of very archaic language, but then also really modern language just thrown in there. Honestly, I'm in my mid-30s, and to me this felt like watching Gen Z on TikTok in a haunted castle in space. Sorry. But yeah, I'm glad so many people love this book, but it wasn't for me. To be fair, it's not one of my favourite genres, so yeah, really it just came down to a case of it's not you, it's me. Which, you know, is a lie that I told all of my exes too. So overall, unfortunately I rated this as a 2, and unfortunately it didn't get any better from here because I was really disappointed with the next book I read, which was Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. And I'd heard such great things about this. It's a Regency romance, it was, you know, fun, and it started off really well and I was enjoying it, I was liking the vibes. It did feel a bit like there's a lot of things in it that just would not have happened in the time period it's set in, and there's a lot of dialogue that it felt out of place, but I was just pushing that aside. And I think, did the Secret History just try and attack me? That is so on brand for the Secret History. Yeah, I was willing to throw aside all of the things that seemed out of place, and the fact that she was just going off with a man without a chaperone, for example, which just wouldn't have happened, and some of the language that was being used, because it seemed like a fun story. What I couldn't forgive was that this was marketed as a feminist book, which it is not. For a start, our love interest, our Duke, there is a scene where this is a very mild spoiler, so do feel free to skip ahead, but it's pretty mild and it's something you may want to know, but if you don't want to know, skip ahead. So our Duke, there is a scene where he thinks about how we basically could just essay our female main character if he wanted to. You know, he's not going to do that because he's such a nice guy. You know, other men would do it, but not him. But he thinks about it. He does. He also decides that he's just going to ask her to be his mistress. How romantic. I will add that there's also a ton of gender essentialist language in here. For example, she has a trill of feminine apprehension. She also has feminine warmth, and there's multiple traits that are just constantly described as feminine, and she did something femininely, and some of it just really grated on me after a while, and I could see it really putting some people off. At first, I thought this book would be at least a 3-star, to be honest, and then the further I got through it, just the lower it went, and it became pretty offensive to me in places. So unfortunately this got a 1.5. However, I did feel as though I was really craving a Regency romance, and since I didn't get a good one there, I wanted to try another one, so I went with Earl Crush by Alexandra Vasti. Once again, I read this on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copy to show you. So we follow our main character Lydia, who has been corresponding with the Duke of Strathronach. I hope I've said that right. I'm so sorry to anyone in Scotland because I've probably butchered that. But she's been corresponding with him for a few years, and he is basically in dire straits financially, so she decides it would be great for them to have a marriage of convenience. I'm not, again, this is no spoilers, like some of this is on the blurb, some of it is like chapter 1. Okay, so she goes over there and she turns up to propose, and when she gets there, the Earl has no idea who she is. No idea. Turns out she's not been corresponding with him, she's been corresponding with someone else. who's pretending to be him, in case that wasn't clear. This had a slow start, but once it got going, it was like a really fun, it was just a really fun time. There were times when I thought the plot went a little bit dull, but then it picked up again. Overall, I liked it. I didn't love it, but I did like it, and I gave it a 3.5, 3.75. So pretty good. It's a fun time. After that, I read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I'd seen this in quite a few places, and there seemed to be a lot of hype around it, and I'm sorry because I just don't get it. The plot sounded great. It's about a group of women they're in an underground bunker. They've got no idea why they're there, no idea how they got there, and they are being guarded all the time by men. I felt like I was just waiting for something to happen in this book, but it ended up being kind of meandering, and I don't mind ambiguity in endings that's intentional, but to me this didn't feel intentional. The ambiguity in this felt like the author just didn't actually know the reason. One, didn't fit into a plot. I don't think she has any answers, which, you know, contrasts to the ambiguity in the Ishiguro books that I read this month, where the ambiguity is ambiguity done right, and it's so intentional, so deliberate, and just brilliant. Whereas this, I feel, is ambiguity done badly. Ultimately, I just found the book kind of pointless and frustrating. But the premise was really good, and there were some thought-provoking things, particularly in the beginning, some thought-provoking questions. So overall, it was another 2-star, so disappointing. And next I read Leo Tolstoy, How Much Land Does a Man Need? And this contains 2 short stories because it also has What Men Live By in it. Once again, this was kind of frustrating because I love Tolstoy. War and Peace and Anna Karenina are 2 of my favourite books. I just think they're absolute masterpieces. I mean, who doesn't write? They're brilliant. This felt like it was by a different author. This was written later on in Tolstoy's career, after he kind of found religion. The first story is pretty good. If it was just the first one, it would have got a higher rating. The second story is incredibly preachy, so I would say the first one is more of a 4-star, the second one's more of a 2-star, so overall this got 3 stars. The next one I finished was also on Kindle, and it was the final one in the Throne of Glass series, which is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously I won't say much about this one because it's really been the last one in the series. I can't say anything without spoiling the plot. But I know it's a lot of people's favourite in the series. It wasn't mine. This series has been all over the place for me. It's had 2-star books, 3-star books, 4-star books, 5-star books. This one was probably a 4. Not my favourite in the series, and some pretty dark themes in there. Considering it's YA, surprisingly dark in this one. I did enjoy the Throne of Glass series overall. Not book 1. Book 1, that was like a 2-star for me, but then it got better. But ACOTAR I preferred that series overall to the Throne of Glass series. After that, I read Sula by Toni Morrison, and this is the first Toni Morrison book that I've read. We follow Sula and Nal, who are 2 very smart, very close black girls from a place that they call the Bottom, which is in Ohio. Sula and Nal go through a lot together, but I was also surprised because the plot speaks about how it's about the friendship between Sula and Nal, but actually for a lot of it we're not really seeing their friendship. They're apart for years, and then they come back together as adults, and they're both living very different lives. Nal is married with children, and Sula is leading a much less conventional life. I didn't find Sula as a character likeable. Equally, I do understand that she does completely challenge what women are supposed to be within society, and she's defiant and she's selfish, and that's not always a bad thing, but I didn't find her likeable, and I think that did affect my enjoyment of the book. I found this one really difficult actually, because I thought the writing was absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's Toni Morrison, right? I think Toni Morrison, she writes from a place and not to a place, if that makes sense. I found a quote from her where she said, "I'm writing for black people, I don't have to apologise or consider myself limited." And another quote from her which said, "Something I was very determined to do is write in the language of African Americans, the language I heard." the dialect used, it's very unfamiliar to me, you know, as a white British person. I suppose what it does do is create that jarring thing of I'm not used to having things that aren't written to me, right, because I come from this position of privilege within society. It kind of allowed me to see that from that perspective and to feel like the outsider, which of course I felt like an outsider most of my life in other terms, especially with being neurodivergent, being disabled, but I've never felt it in terms of race. I've never been ostracised because of my race, I've never experienced racism. So I really admire Toni Morrison from taking the stance that she does, from writing from within, and even if it doesn't resonate with me, because that's fine, not everything will, and not everything is aimed at me, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, I'm still figuring out my thoughts on it, I guess. It's one of my, like I say, it's one that I've only just finished, and I feel like my thoughts are not fully settled in. I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to rate it. So I'm not going to, and you can't make me. So that is all 16 books that I read this month. I'm very close to finishing my 17th one, but I'm not quite there. I've nearly finished A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, which I'm really enjoying. I'm about 80% through it now, I think, so that'll definitely be in next month. I'm also reading The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty, which I'm not far into yet. I'm maybe 10% into it, so that should be coming next month. Do let me know if you'd like a deeper dive into any of these books. Like I say, I do have one for the A Pale View of Hills coming out very soon, but yeah, if you'd like any more, let me know. Also, let me know what you've been reading, and also, have you read any of these books? What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'm so sorry if I bashed one of your favourites, but you know, we all have preferences, that's obvious. So yeah, let me know your best books of the month, or your worst if you're feeling sassy. And thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad to have you here. Please do give this video a like if you liked it. Please drop me a comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, bye. What am I saying? Oh. Brain. Hello, is anyone in there? Didn't enjoy the next book we read. We read? Did you read it with me? I don't know. We are following our main character Lydia, who has been corresponding with the Earl of Ragnarstrath. Scottish are gonna hate me. And this